Hello everyone and welcome to Codeland. As I told you that I will start Flutter application development tutorials from scratch, and here I am to start the Flutter application development. And first of all, we will go to the flutter.io website, which is the official website of Flutter application development, and I will tell you how to install the Flutter SDK on your system. Flutter is basically the SDK developed by Google, which is used to create and develop application, the native application for Android and iOS on a single code base. Flutter uses Dart language, and it is similar to Java, and it is an extended version of Java. If you want to start mobile application development and you don't know the Android programming, just like Java and Kotlin and iOS, and for iOS Swift, you don't know these languages, then you can start with the Flutter application development, because it is totally changed, and it is based on the Dart language, which is very simple and easy language to learn. So you can start Flutter application development. If you don't know the mobile application development, then don't worry, you can start with the Flutter application development and make hybrid applications. So this is the installation process, and if you use Mac and Windows, you can choose these options. As I have Windows, so I will click on this button link, and you can see that this is the process of how to install the SDK and how to set up the environment of Flutter. First step is the system requirements, which is this one, the disk space and the tools for Flutter. And again, this is the link for Flutter SDK. You can download this SDK from here, and uh, again you can see that the update your path, the Flutter SDK path, you can set in the environment variables. If you are because it is a cross platform, so you will definitely give a path to the system. For example, if you have downloaded the Flutter SDK, you can paste the folder in the C folder, as I have already downloaded the Flutter SDK. And inside the Flutter SDK, this is the Flutter SDK folder, and inside this folder you will have a folder which is a bin folder, and you can copy this path, and you can right click on this PC and select the properties option, and over here you can select the advanced system settings, and inside this one you can select the option environment variables. Okay, in the environment variables, you can set the path for the Flutter application development. So this is the process. You can see that first of all, you should provide the name of the variable, and again you can paste the path of the Flutter SDK. As I am already done with this, so I am skipping this option. Flutter application development, you can do Flutter application development with both Visual Studio Code and Android Studio, but most of you using Android Studio, so I will use Android Studio for the first time, but later I will use Flutter Visual Studio Code for Flutter application development. For Android Studio, you can set up the environment for Flutter application development. Simply go to the plugins and again search repositories, and then you can search for the Flutter plugin. This is the Flutter plugin I have already installed on my system. You can select this Flutter plugin and install it on your machine. I think it's a 2 to 3 MB plugin. After that, you will restart your Android Studio and you will see this option, start a new Flutter application, Flutter project. Okay, so let's start to create a new Flutter application. Okay, click on this Flutter, start a new Flutter project. Okay, there are many options. You can see the Flutter application, the Flutter plugin, Flutter package, but we are going to develop the application, the Flutter application, so you can select this option, Flutter application, and click on next. The first field is the project name. You can specify your project name over here. So I am going to write hello world, and this is the Flutter SDK path you have downloaded. If you have downloaded the Flutter SDK, then you can select the path from here, but if you don't have Flutter SDK, you can click on the install SDK button. Okay, if you have Flutter SDK, then go to C, and this is the Flutter folder. You can select this one and click on this button. This is the Flutter project location, and this is the description of the application. Let's say I am writing that this is my new application. Click on next. This is the company domain. The company domain, just like in Android Studio, you are giving the package name, the company domain, which is example.com, and this is the platform language support, because during the Flutter application development sometimes you need to write the native code for iOS and Android, so it gives us the option for include Kotlin support for Android code and include Swift support for iOS code, because nowadays everyone is using Swift for iOS development and Kotlin for Android code. Flutter by default included the Java coding, so it is an option if you are using Kotlin, and if you are familiar with Kotlin, then you can add this option. This is the documentation. You don't need to read this documentation if you are starting with Android Studio. It will automatically set your SDK, and you can easily start Flutter application development. But if you go to the documentation, you can read everything. If you start with the development, you can see the user interface, and here is the introduction to the widgets, and everything available is here. If you are creating the application for the first time, it will take a lot of time, because we do not have any source for the SDK, so it will set up the environment and the SDK path for the machine. And if you see that this is the code, and you can see the analyzing at the bottom of the project, and this will create and build your Flutter application. The Flutter application project is divided into three categories. The first one is the Android part, and the second one is the iOS part, and the third one is the lib folder. And you can see that the Flutter application, if you create a single page in Flutter, you will see the states. For example, in Android we have views. Everything is view. If you are using button, if you are using layout, if you are using spinner, everything is view. But in Flutter we have widgets, and widgets just like views, but the Flutter concept is totally different, and it says that everything is widget and its own functionality. Widgets are of two types. The first one is the stateless widget, and the second one is the stateful widget. As name specified that if the widget is not changing its state, then it is a stateless widget, and if the object or the widget changes its state, then it is called stateful widget. The example of stateful widget is that if a text view changes its value, then it is a stateful widget. If you go to the hello world, you can see the Android section, and in Android section you can see the Java coding, application source main, and this is the package name, and you can see the main activity. Or if you go to the iOS section, you can see the runner folder, and also you can see the Flutter project as well. But we don't need these two folders, as we will code in the main.dart, which is a dart extension file inside the lib folder. It is the main function, which is this one, and here you can see that this is the main class of the Flutter application, and it contains some code, and you will see that how this code is working, and what is meant by this code. If you analyze this coding, you will see that okay, just like in Android Studio, you are using Gradle, build.gradle file, which is for dependencies. We use the Gradle build.file for dependencies or other information about the application. But in Flutter you will see that this is the pubspec.yml file, which is a root file for the application. Without this file, the Flutter application is not working, because it specifies the path for the Flutter application, the Flutter SDK, and you can add the third-party SDK or libraries over here. Add the dependencies of the third parties applications, or dependencies, libraries and plugins. And you can see the assets, which is you can say the files, the fonts and the text files or images, audios. You can add from here. Just create an asset folder in the hello world folder, and now you can add the reference of the images or everything you can add in the pubspec.yml file. So it is a very important file, which is a root file of Flutter application development. Okay, let's analyze the main.dart code. You can see that this is the library, which is a material.dart. It comes from the Flutter SDK. You can see that package flutter slash material.dart. So it is a material application, material design application. So it has imported the Flutter material.dart library, and you know that every application starts with the main function. So here you can see that the main function which run the application with the class myApp, and myApp is a stateless widget. Just like you see in the Android application, everything is extended with the app compact activity and the views, but in Flutter everything is widget, and you can see that the main class extends the stateless widget, because the whole single screen is a stateless widget, which is doing nothing because it is just a screen. And inside this stateless widget myApp, you can see that it has a method, an overriding method built, because it will build a widget, and the widget returns the material application. Okay, so this is the material application, and a material application have some properties, have some attributes, and the first one is the title of the material application, and this is the theme. It says that what kind of theme you are using for the application. So if you are creating a new page or new activity, this theme will be applied on the single page. Okay, so this is the color, this is the default color of the application, which is a theme color, primary swatch, and this is the home. The third property is the home property of the material application. For the home we have another class, which is inside the material we have home property, and home property includes another stateful widget class. You can see that this is the my home page, and the title of this my home page is Flutter demo home page. Okay, my home page is a class which extends the stateful widget, because it has action bar, the action menu button, app bar menu buttons, and floating action button, and the body of the application. This is the constructor of the my home page, which includes the title of the app bar. You will see that in the floating action, in the app bar, in the action bar, you will see a name Flutter demo project. Okay, so this is the application. You can see that Flutter demo home page, this is the name. You can see this is the Flutter demo home page. Okay, let me explain you. Okay, if I click on this floating action button, the text view changes its state. Why? Because this is the stateful widget, and I told you that whenever a widget changes its state, it is called a stateful widget. So the whole screen is a stateless widget, but inside this stateless widget we have a stateful widget, which is a single screen inside a stateless widget, and inside this home state page, if you create the stateful widget, it will create two classes. the first one is the my home page, which is the name of the home of the stateless widget, and inside this we have another class which is a state, which is the state of the widget. The state of the widget, for example, we have my home page, which is a stateful widget, and the state of this stateful widget is the my home page state. And inside this stateful widget we have a build method. This code is not very hard, very difficult to understand, but if I write this code, you will understand that what is going on. So this is the build function, and it returns the scaffold. And actually, what is scaffold? Scaffold is just like a structure of the single page. Let's say that this is the single screen. So what will be the structure of this single screen? The whole screen is a scaffold, and inside this scaffold the structure contains the scaffold contains the action bar, and this is the app bar, and this is the title section, and you can see the Flutter demo homepage, which is the title, which is this one. Okay, and again we have a body, and this whole part below the app bar we have a body. In the center of the body we have two text views. As you can see that these text views you are seeing in the column, in the vertical structure. So we have used column, and inside this column we have a the children's of the column. This is the children, and we have two text views, which is this one. You have pushed the button this many times, and this is the another text view, which is this one. If I click on the floating action button, it is changing its state and changing its value. And again, this is the floating action button. Okay, the scaffold has three properties. The first one is the app bar, and again the body of the single page, and it contains the floating action button. Actually, the floating action button has some attributes, which the first one is the on pressed. Whenever we click on the floating action button, it will call this increment counter method, which has defined above. We have defined above this method. And again we have a tool tip. If I long press on this action button, you can see that it shows a toast message, and this is the child. For example, we have set the child of the floating action button to add icon. If I change the icon to home and press Ctrl plus S button, means I save the file, so it will change the icon of the floating action button. You can see that actually this is the hot reload function provided by the Flutter, and you can do the development with Flutter with the hot reload. Whenever you do some changes, it will see on the emulator by pressing Ctrl plus S. Okay, so I am now changing the color of the icon, and you can see that if I pressed the Ctrl S button, you can see that it changes the floating action button color, icon color. So this is the first tutorial which is about the introduction of the Flutter and how you can install the application. The Flutter SDK and set the environment for the Flutter application.